At 10, RICO charges are now dropped against people who protested the building of Atlanta's public safety training facility. I'm Sydney Stallworth.
And I'm Wale Ali. Atlanta News First anchor Joe Gorcho is at the breaking news desk tonight. Joe, you have new details here at 10.
Wale, Sydney, good evening to you. The Attorney General's office does plan to appeal the decision. They tell us that they simply do not agree with the court's interpretation of the statute at the heart of this ruling to dismiss the RICO charges. Tonight, through Atlanta News First sources, we received the court order from the Superior Court of Fulton County granting the motion to dismiss racketeering charges against activists who protested against the Atlanta Public Safety Center. The judge, in his court order, mentions the state's RICO statute does not contain, quote, any such provision that grants the Attorney General the ability to prosecute such cases without being required by governor. That means the judge contends Attorney General Chris Carr had to get Governor Brian Kemp's permission to do so, but did not in this case against the dozens of defendants. The 2023 indictment accused many activists of being part of a criminal organization, facing allegations for participating in violent activities such as destroying property and throwing Molotov cocktails at the Public Safety Center, along with setting fire to police vehicles. In a statement from the state's Attorney General's office this evening, they offered this response, quote, we strongly disagree with the decision and will continue to vigorously pursue the domestic terrorism case to ensure that justice is served, end quote. Now, we do not have an official timetable for when an appeal of the ruling dismissing the RICO charges will take place, but we do know that there are still 5 defendants in this Cop City case still facing domestic terrorism and arson charges. Wale, Sydney, back to you.
Joe, thank you also.